into yet another informative edition of your program. This is Agricultural New Directions Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030, and my name is Wadzanai Manyore. Today we are going to be looking at pig production or management during the winter season. We are going to be discussing how to manage your piggery here in Zimbabwe with Mr. Tamo Muza, who's working here at Pig Industry Board right here in Zimbabwe. Mr. Muza, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Wadzanai.
As we get into our discussion, Mr. Muza, maybe just a brief background of this unit, this section we are in, its holding capacity, the infrastructure that you have put in place to ensure that your pigs are well taken care of.
Okay, this pen here, we call it a farrowing house. And this farrowing house can carry up to 8 sows that are either lactating or that are due to farrow. So, which means for one who is running a piggery, you are looking at probably 4 times the number of sows of the holding pen that you can keep, which will be accommodated by this kind of structure. So it's actually, it takes care of quite a number of sows. Now, this kind of structure, it's actually unique in the sense that it's actually constructed in such a way that you can easily control the temperatures. Because when piglets are born, they will require temperatures of around 32 to 34 degrees Celsius. And these temperatures are very difficult to achieve if you don't put structures that are ideal. So this structure here, as you can see, it has got windows which you can open or close just to make sure no amount of drift will actually come to disturb the pigs. And also besides that, we have, this infrared lamp. This infrared lamp is actually put above this small compartment. We call it a creep area. That is a creep box, so that when it's very cold, the piglets will actually come here and huddle together, but also get the benefit of the heat from this infrared lamp. So it's supposed to actually make sure the sow will have its own environment, because the sow is comfortable with the temperatures of around 16 to 18 degrees Celsius. And yet the piglets will need much more than that, which means if you subject this sow to the temperatures of around 30 or so, it will become very uncomfortable. So you need to have a micro environment that you create for the piglets.
Thank you so much, Mr. Muza. That was very detailed. Now I'd like us to talk about each unit. What is the holding capacity per sow unit, and what do you look at? Do we have times where you say the piglets are now too much for this sow, we are going to take them elsewhere? What is the holding capacity per section for a sow and these piglets? Okay,
what actually determines the number that the sow is going to be taken care of is what is going to farrow. So the sow, if the sow farrows say about 12 piglets, and it so happens that it has got also 12 teats, we leave it with its own litter. Okay. But in case where a sow farrows more piglets than the number of teats, yes, we then have to foster some of the piglets. We give them to another sow that has given, probably that has farrowed less piglets than the teats it has. So that we leave this one with the number that is equal to the number of teats. Okay. So this is basically what determines the number that the sow is going to be looking after.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Muza, to the main topic of today's discussion. During winter, are there characteristics that you see within your pigs, be it sows, be it the boars, be it the piglets, that you would say maybe there are changes in behavior as we transition from summer into winter? What are those characteristics that you see, and how do you address them in a snippet?
Yeah, like any animal, you find that pigs are very sensitive also to the changes in temperature. If it's very hot, pigs are not very comfortable, especially the adult ones, because they are comfortable with 16 to 18 degrees Celsius. But if it gets also very cold, you find that they are not also comfortable. So they have that tendency of huddling together if they are staying in groups. Okay. right? If they are not staying in groups and they are just staying as individuals, they would prefer also to bath in the sun, so that they get the heat from the sun. But as far as the piglets are concerned, whether they are born in summer or they are born in winter, you find that it's very difficult for you to have the ideal temperatures at any given time within a structure. You need to have this kind of setup so that you can provide external heat. Because at some point, especially during the night, it gets very, very cold, even if it's summertime. But if it's winter, we use more of the infrared lamps than we do in summer, because most of the time during the day it's cold. So you can have this on even during the whole day. And yet in summer probably you can put them on maybe during the night. During the day they are okay. Besides the infrared lamps, you find we also put bedding inside the crib box to make sure it will also make sure that they are not in contact with the cement, because it's very cold. Yes, so you need to keep them very warm. So if you find them coming together and try to huddle together, and every time they are uneasy, it shows that they are not very comfortable, and you need to provide this heat. And this heat, as you can see, the infrared lamp has got a height that we maintain.
Okay.
If you find that they still try to huddle together to get some warmth, you lower it a bit,
okay,
until they can get enough heat, all of them. So that's what we basically do to maintain ideal temperatures here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musa. When we come back, I would also want us to touch on those farmers who might not have access to electricity, the other forms of heat that they acquire to ensure that their piglets and their sows are comfortable during winter. On that note, viewers, we're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back, viewers. Thank you for tuning in to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness. You are listening to Zanai Manyore here today with Mr. Tamo Musa, as we are talking about how to manage your pig enterprise during the winter season. We understand that winter has its own set of challenges that might affect your profits or eat into your process if you are not careful. Now, Zimbabwe, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with the producer, Zanai Manyore. It's on 0772807506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Zanai. Leave your comments and suggestions. They are most welcome to us. On our YouTube channel, it's Agribusiness with Zanai. We're also now available on Twitter, where most of these discussions take place and updates are constantly placed on our Twitter timeline. It's at Agribusiness110. Now, earlier on, before into the break, Mr. Musa here was telling us how they make use of electricity using the infrared light to make sure that they maintain heat throughout winter. Mr. Musa, welcome back. We are in the second segment.
Thank you, Wadzanai.
We're talking of how you are making use of electricity here at the Pig Industry Board. Now, we do have farmers who are also into pig production, but they don't have access to electricity. What are the sources of heat that you can advise or highlight to our audience there at home?
Thank you, Wadzanai. We have quite a number of farmers here in Zimbabwe who are already putting up biogas digesters. And if you put up such a structure, you find that the gas that is generated from the manure that you release from the pigsties, it will actually be able to heat up the heaters, which can function the same as the infrared lamps. Okay. And it's actually cheaper. It is expensive when you are installing the infrastructure, but once it's in place, you only need to constantly maintain it. So in the long run, it will be much cheaper than the electricity. Okay. And besides, if you don't have this biogas, you can even improvise a small tin, which we call in Shona Mbaura. Yeah. You can use that and put some firewood, let the fire rest, and until you get probably the charcoal.
The red charcoal.
Yeah, red charcoal. Then you come and place it inside the pigsty. Okay. in where the piglets are going to be huddling together. So you will be warming that place using that. But besides the external heat that you are providing, make sure the bedding is okay, about 10 centimeter height. That will be good enough. Besides that, as you can see, Wadzanai, we've got some flaps at the windows there. So those flaps on the windows, you can either close it or open them. So when you close them, especially during the night, you are actually making sure that the warm air will just remain in the inside, and the piglets will be comfortable. And when it's warm like this, you fold them back to make sure they get proper aeration. So it's one of those things that you also do if you don't have such a setup.
Can you maybe talk to us in terms of how choosing a good site for your piggery enterprise plays a pivotal role, especially in seasons of winter or summer? When you choose your site, what do you need to look at to ensure that if it's summer, they are in a cool environment? If it's winter, you're also getting enough sunlight into you. What are those aspects in brief that you would say that when choosing your pigsty site, you need to take cognizance of?
Okay, mostly we would like as much as possible to avoid flays. You know, the flays are normally very cold, and when you have this frost, those are the areas that are actually affected by frost. So you avoid such places because it will be difficult to warm up these small creatures, right? So you avoid that. If you don't have any other choice and you happen to construct your pigsties on that particular area, you make sure the farrowing house is not on the lower side. It will be on the upper side because the upper side is warmer than the lower side, right? So it's one of those things that you consider. Besides probably the orientation and also the place with regards your homestead. Because normally in pigs size, you have a lot of slurry that will be moving out of the pig pens, and the slurry will attract a lot of flies.
Yes.
So you wouldn't want your homestead to be on the widower side. You face a lot of problems. Yes,
or
yes.
You have problems with your neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to make sure your pigsties are on the windward side and your house is on the eastern side. Normally the wind will blow from east to west direction. So you make sure your homestead is on the eastern side and the pigsty is on the western side, or the pigsty is on the southern side or northern side, so that no foul smell will actually come back to your homestead.
Okay.
Yes, so you need to consider that.
Mr. Musa, I want us to talk about issues surrounding nutrition or the diet or your feeding regimens in winter. Is there a difference where you would want to highlight that maybe in winter they consume more or they consume less? Is there a difference between giving your pigs feed in winter and in summer? Do they consume more, do they consume less, or is it the same?
Basically, we allocate feed to these animals the same amount that it would consume in summer, but the difference now will be like this. What if it consumes the same amount of feed in winter? It will not be able to give you the same amount of meat that you are getting in summer. In other words, I'm actually talking about feed conversion efficiency.
Okay.
The feed conversion efficiency will actually be slightly reduced because some of the feed will go towards eating the body, and you won't get the benefit of that feed through the meat that you would want. So it reduces growth rate. So you find, the growth rates for pigs generally is lower in the winter than the summer period.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any challenges with piglets that are born in winter as compared to those that are born in summer? What are the differences that you would want to highlight?
The challenges will be in the form of, the cold. If you don't control this cold, then you tend to have pneumonia. Incidences of pneumonia, it will be very high. And this is why probably most of the farmers around this time of the year, we actually have to vaccinate against pneumonia. we use the Respissure to make sure we reduce the incidences of pneumonia. Yes. So but if you have all the gadgets in place, like your heaters and or your mbaura in place, everything like that, in terms of management, it will not be any problem at all. But if you don't have such things, you tend to have a lot of crashes. Crashing actually takes about 53% of the mortalities during the suckling period. So you find crashes become more, especially when it's winter, because the piglets would want to lie close to the mother, because the mother is very warm. Her temperature is around 40 degrees Celsius. The piglets will realize that, and they would want to lie close to the mother. So when the mother just moves slightly like that, you can have a lot of crashes as opposed to the summer period. Yes. So you need to take care of your warmth, so that they don't rely on the mother for warmth. They will rely on this external heat that you provide.
That was very detailed, Mr. Musa. And I like the way you are explaining it for the proper articulation for our audience there at home. On that note, we're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back, viewers. We are watching Agricultural New Directions Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030, where we are looking at piggery management during the winter season. There are a lot of differences of managing your enterprise in summer and then in winter, which is the case today. We are looking at those nitty-gritties that ensure that you remain viable within your enterprise even during the winter season. Mr. Musa, we are here in the third and final segment. Welcome back.
Welcome. Thank you.
In terms of water intake, Mr. Musa, when it comes to pigs and pig management, is it the case that maybe in winter there's slightly lower water intake when it comes to them drinking water, and as compared to summer? What's the case like?
Yeah, during the summer period it's very, very hot, and you find that the pigs actually get their cooling system through a lot of water that they will be taking inside their bodies. And as they urinate, that urine is also used as a process of heat release. Okay. Right? So when it's winter time like this, you find that the temperatures are just ideal most of the time for the grown-up pigs. Mm-hmm. So which means if it's not a lactating sow, they are not going to be using much water as probably they would do in summer. But come to these suckling pigs or lactating pigs like this, you find that even if it's winter time, we encourage them to take as much water as possible, because for them to be able to feed these little piglets adequately, they need to be producing a lot of milk. So that's why we encourage them to take a lot of water through the feed that they are feeding, and that's why we do what we call wet feeding. We mix the feed with water, so that it's actually good for it to eat wet feed than dry feed. Oh. It will take more. It's palatable. Okay. Right? So we want to encourage it to take as much water as possible. Right? For lactating sows, we don't need them to change. They will just take a lot of water because they will actually be suckling. But for the rest of the pigs, they tend to reduce the amount of water. Because even if you are looking at those people who are using feed water troughs, you find that during summer period, the pigs will be trying to wallow in that water. Yes. And by so doing, they tend to waste a lot of water. But during this time of the year, no pig will actually try to go into the water, because the environment is just good enough for just to stay like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Musa, when it comes to conception rates or situations where we are saying maybe the boar is on heat or the sow is on heat, is there differences that you might want to highlight, given maybe you would say that during summer they are always on heat and the conception rate is higher, we are having more sows going into gestation period, or you would say that there isn't much difference whether it's summer or it's winter, the boars are always on heat, the sows are always conceiving. What is it like? Is there a difference when it comes to variations in seasons?
Yeah, what goes on heat is the sow, and what we do is our management will not change whether it's winter or summertime, which means as soon as this sow is weaned, we would want it to come back on heat within about 5 to 7 days, right? So whether it's winter time or it's summertime, so which means the heat cycle is actually dependent upon the good management that you give to your pigs. This is where now you do end up having your sow farrowing twice a year and then getting the third pregnancy, which will be farrowed in the following year.
Okay.
Because so that management will just be like that, whether it's winter time or summertime.
Okay.
So it depends entirely on how good you are in feeding your pig during lactation. So once it's weaned, it will definitely go, just do the cycle that is natural. Okay. It will just come on it like that.
Now, earlier on in the first segment, Mr. Musa, you spoke of pneumonia being one of the diseases that affect the piglets during winter. Now we have different categories of pigs here. We are talking of the growers, the boars, the sows. Are there any conditions that you might want to highlight that maybe come forth due to the changes in seasons now that we are transitioning into winter?
Basically, we seem to notice a reduction in diseases during winter time, because it's like bacteria thrives in warm and moist conditions. Okay. So normally the bacteria infestation is low. But bearing in mind that in pig structures, pigs are always using a lot of water and they dung within the pen. Okay. And people end up cleaning the pen using water. So you find the floors are always wet. And when they are wet, you tend to promote, bacteria. But simply because it's cold most of the time, then the infections are less than what you would get in summer. Okay. But when it comes to diseases like pneumonia, you find that they are not only restricted to piglets, but you can have pneumonia in your grower section. In those porkers, they can have even pneumonia. So it's very common this time of the year. Okay. But for sows, we are always guarding against what we call MMA, that is mastitis, metritis, and agalactia. That disease is a bacterial disease which actually affects the udder, and once the sow is affected, it will not be producing milk. But it will occur because maybe you have ignored the aspect of teeth clipping. Because if you don't remove the teeth, the milk teeth of those little piglets, they will sort of injure the sow.
Or they will bite the teeth.
Yes, and once the teeth are injured, they become entry points for pathogens, right? And then you end up with such diseases. So those diseases, we always guard against them, because whether in winter or summer, such diseases will always occur. But the occurrence is less than what we would get in summer. Because in winter, bacteria is not very active.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musa. That was very detailed. On that note, viewers, we have come to the end of this week's edition, where we're looking at pig production during the winter season right here in Zimbabwe. From me, your host, Zanai Manyore, I'm also on Instagram. It's a W Manyore, and the crew behind the scenes. Have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.